But there has been a twist this year as well. There's one new section that's been added.
In my opinion, I think they just wanted to know how do you engage with the kind of topics or issues that you're interested in.
They want students to have that spirit of inquiry, that desire of learning how to learn, and to come with an open mind, because a lot of the preconceived notions may get challenged in the program. So it's almost like a legacy of sorts coming to an end. Hello everyone, welcome to another video at Evolving Being. Today we'll be talking about YF's application process that has just been released for this academic cycle. We'll talk about the changes and new aspects that have been introduced to the form. And before we get started, I'd like to introduce ourselves to you. Kizo, why don't you take it away?
Hi everyone, I am Tenzin Kizom. I work as the application manager at Evolving Being. I've graduated from Ashoka University with the advanced major in psychology and a minor in media studies.
Thank you, Kizom. I'm also an alum of Ashoka. I did the Young India Fellowship program in the second cohort, and subsequently I went on to be a part of the admissions committee both for the YF program and the undergraduate program. I've extensively done outreach for the university, where I got a chance to travel across the country and speak to students from different universities, sharing with them the value of a liberal arts education and how YF can help them get to their next steps. And currently, I'm also a student. I'm studying at Harvard University, doing a master's program in education, leadership, and entrepreneurship as a Fulbright scholar. I'm very motivated to support students in their application journey. And today, we'll focus on YF's application journey. So to share broad level overviews, Kizo, are there any changes that you've noticed this year?
There are quite a few changes that we have made in the application. So generally, if you apply to Young India Fellowship, the process for the application is to fill up the application form. Then you have on-the-spot essay and interview. But this year, you don't have to go through the process of writing the on-the-spot essay.
Yeah, so they've done away with one stage of the application form completely, where you don't have to write on-the-spot essays, which makes it easier for you to apply to the university. But they have also made it a little more competitive in another way. They've reduced the batch strength. Last year we had 200 students that were selected for the YF program, but now they're bringing it down to 100 students. So I anticipate the process to become more competitive, but simpler at the same time. Let's jump into the specifics. In terms of personal details and descriptions, we notice that there are a few new sections. For instance, the language proficiency section has been added this year. Kizom, would you like to share what that is?
So they've added this new tab where you can list out the languages that you speak, where you can also mention the proficiency and the level of the language that you speak.
Along with it, there's another section on honors and awards, where you can talk about your academic scholarships, papers that you may have published, any ranks that you have held in competitive exams, and add descriptions for those details as well. Maximum of 250 words, and you can add up to 5 such awards and accomplishments in the paper. In the past, we used to use the additional essay section to highlight these changes, but they've explicitly spelled out a section for you to do that. This doesn't mean that if you don't have anything, you must write something in that section. I would recommend you not to do that, but only if you have these awards and honors, then go ahead and add that to to the section of the application.
So they've also added the standardized tests tab, where you can list out any standardized tests if you've ever given. If you've gotten good scores, you can mention them. You can also put attachment of the certificates of the exams that you've given. Some of the options that I can see here are CAT, GATE, GMAT, GRE, IELTS, GE Advanced, many of them TOEFL, NEET, UPSC prelims, and there are other options. If you have given any other standardized tests that I haven't mentioned, you can add them up.
And one can add up to a maximum of 5 such standardized tests and not more. Moving on to the essay section. So we've noticed they've made your life easier here as well. Now, traditionally, we had 4 essays plus a supplemental or an additional essay. This year, we only have 3 essays plus that additional essay, which is optional. So that's a good thing. Kizom, would you like to talk about, say, essay 1?
Yes, sure. So the first essay for the Young Indian Fellowship Program this year remains the same as last year. The question is, tell us about your personal journey so far. And the word limit is up to 300 words. There's a slight change in this year's question. Although they still want you to talk about your personal journey, they have added that in your response, they want you to include a situation where you display leadership to overcome a personal, professional, or academic challenge. So they've made the essay a little more specific, because if someone says, tell me about your personal journey, I think anyone can talk about a lot of things from their journey. But this year's question is a little more specific, and they want you to talk about you displaying a leadership to overcome any of the challenges you've faced in your life.
Yeah, that's true, because I saw a lot of students' essays last year, and this section would particularly be a narration or a reiteration of everything that's on their resume from the day they were born to what they've done so far. They would just knit it together into one narrative without talking about who they are as a person behind all those numbers, designations, titles, awards, honors. And the purpose of this essay was getting defeated. So I do see value in them adding that extra description of talking about a situation where they displayed leadership in a particular context and showed how they emerged stronger from that experience. So that description gives a direction to the student in terms of what the committee is looking for, and it will definitely help students structure their ideas better. And then moving on to essay 2. This time they've given you a choice, and we have never seen them give choices for essays before. All the mandatory essays have always been mandatory, but it's interesting to see them take a twist on that. Last year, the question said, tell us about a challenge that you have faced and how you overcame it. What did you learn from this experience? Clearly, they've integrated that into essay 1 in some way, where they've spoken about your leadership. But this year, essay 2 gives you 2 options, and you have to choose one option. The first option is, tell us about a time you changed your mind about an issue, demonstrate how you engaged with the issue and what led to your changed viewpoints. Or, if you could talk to any person from the past or present, fictional or real, who would you pick and what would you discuss? So pretty interesting. The word limit remains the same though. Both essays need to be of maximum 300 words. Kizom, which topic would you have picked?
So I think I would go with the first one, but I also think the second one is a very interesting question. But either ways, I think, in my opinion, I think they just wanted to know how do you engage with the kind of topics or issues that you're interested in the world. So it could be through books, through people, but at the same time, you could be interested in bigger issues and not necessarily just talking about a book. But at the end of the day, I think both topics are really interesting. I am a little biased towards writing more on the first one.
Makes sense. I would also actually choose the first one because it talks about how I change, and I have changed my mind at several points in time based on the situations and contexts. And I've also learned that being malleable to the context always has helped me grow further rather than being stuck to my own viewpoints. And I think this is the spirit of YF as well. They want students to have that spirit of inquiry, that desire of learning how to learn, and to come with an open mind, because a lot of the preconceived notions may get challenged in the program in some way or the other. So they're just trying to test that aspect of a student's candidacy, whether they are open to learning and whether they are open to looking at viewpoints of their peers that may be different from their own. And this happens very often at YF. So it's interesting to see them include that. But if you find this tough, you can go ahead and choose the second option as well, where you can talk about a fictional character or a real person that you may want to speak to, and what would you want to speak to them about. I would recommend you to connect this conversation with a central theme of the difference that you want to make in the world, and align it to your long-term goal, which will bring more coherence to your application. And happy to discuss that in detail if you'd like to chat about it as well.
One point to the first question about the change in your mind about the issue. Just like how Garima mentioned, I think one thing I've noticed about Young Indian Fellowship is not just learning, but it's a lot of unlearning too. So I kind of figured that this question is directed towards how if one would be able to unlearn things when they join the cohort.
Yeah, I've heard that also from students, that they come in with so much and then they realize that they need to break that down and unpack a lot of those aspects before they can learn more. So that's spot on. Kizom, why don't you share essay 3? I see similar themes, but just different words. But what do you think of that?
So if I may read last year's third essay topic, what are aspects of the YF program that you're most excited by? How might they align with your aspirations or goals for pursuing the YF? And it's a 300-word essay last year. But this year, although it looks quite similar to last one, they said, what are your professional or academic aspirations? What are 2 to 3 aspects of the YF program that you believe will contribute to your stated aspiration in the medium to long term? It is almost the same thing, but they've increased the word limit to 350 this year. That's one difference. Another difference that I see is like they wanted you to mention specific aspects of YF program and list it down when answering this question.
They have made it more specific for students. So they talk about either professional and or academic aspirations. So they've been very narrow with that. They've also said medium to long term. How will that help you? Instead of saying a more generic, how do they align with your goals and aspirations? And I have seen students misinterpret this question as well, unfortunately, where they start listing aspects of YF that they find wonderful, but forget to connect it to their own lives and how those aspects are meaningful to them. And this is something that this year's committee has laid emphasis on, where they say, how will it help you in the medium to long term? So they've become very specific and more focused, like with a sharp focus on a particular goal. And this is what they want to see in your response as well, to be more specific of what you hope to take away and what you hope to contribute. I would just say that they've spelled it out, what they really want to hear from you. So that will make it easier for you to structure your response accordingly. And essay 4 has gone away, but in case you're interested, last year's essay said what matters most to you and why, maximum up to 150 words. And this essay has been around for more than a decade in YF's application form. It started in the year 2011. This was an essay at that point. I wrote a response to this essay when I applied to YF. And finally, they're getting rid of this essay. So it's almost like a legacy of sorts coming to an end in some way. But this became one of the most popular questions that students would discuss, that, if I'm applying to YF, what is it that I would write? Like, how would I respond to such an ambiguous question? And in a way, it sort of also opened a window to the ambiguity within the program. It was a reflection of that. And I see that now it's becoming sharper and more focused towards specific goals and objectives. Yeah, so I know essay 4 for you. So, it's a sigh of relief, and you have to write lesser. At the same time, the extra essay question remains. Kizom, do you want to maybe highlight what that is?
So I see a really important change in this part of the application. So the last year application only asks you to write this extra essay if you've taken a gap year in your academic or professional journey, right? So they want you to explain this gap and write about 100 words. But this year, they not only want you to talk about your gap period and why you took the gap, they've added another question, which is if you've applied to the Young Indian Fellowship Program previously. So if you're someone who has applied before and got rejected and you're reapplying to the program, you have to write an extra essay talking about why they should or must consider you as a candidate for this year. So I think that's a very interesting add to the application, and it's 200 words this year, so you can write 100 for each of these questions if you fall in these two categories, and if you fall in either of them, you have to answer separately.
That is correct, because last year they just said if there are gap years or anything else you want to elaborate on, but they never spelled this aspect of if you're reapplying to YF, talk about that aspect of your application before. Although this was something that they were constantly evaluating students on. And I have worked with a lot of students who are reapplicants to YIF, and we've extensively focused on what they did in previous applications and the changes that they've made to their profile in this year's application. And I would always recommend them to talk about it within their application in the extra essay section, because this was a question, the first question that a committee member would ask is, well, what's changed? How is your application different from last year? And instead of leaving it for them to guess that aspect, I would always tell them to structure it and write it explicitly in the additional information section. And it worked well for a few of them. So I'm happy to see them spell it out and make it again easier for the applicants to understand what they're looking for, rather than leave it for the students to keep guessing that, well, what should I write in the extra information? And I had also noticed in the past that a lot of awards, accomplishments, extra courses, things that they had done, but they didn't have space to elaborate on. Very often students would use this extra information section to highlight that aspect of their profile that they couldn't highlight anywhere else. This year's application comes across as more well thought through because they've given you separate space for each of those aspects. And this is really, in the real sense, an extra essay. Only if specific situations apply to you should you attempt it. And in no way it is mandatory for you to write this essay if these two situations don't apply to you. So that's with regard to that. But there has been a twist this year as well. There's one new section that's been added. You want to talk about it?
They've asked the students to upload a one-page CV this year. I think this is going to be useful for the admission committee to look at the applicants and actually see what they've done. Yeah, this is an interesting add to the form.
Yeah, I have my own opinion on this. I feel the resume is really unnecessary for students because they're asking you for your academics, co-curriculars, extra co-curriculars, awards, accomplishments, extra essay. They've really taken everything that you've had and put that in the form, and then to ask you to write it again in one page. I find that repetitive. So I feel the students will really struggle with putting this together, and it will be extra work for them. So they've taken away one essay, but they've given you like a one-page resume to write. So in a way, the workload increases, in my opinion. And also, Kisom, have they shared any sample or format of a resume one-pager, or they've left it to the students?
They've left it to the students. They haven't shared specific.
So this year, then they will see diversity of samples. They will see so many different formats of the resume, which will make it difficult for them to evaluate. If I was on the committee, I would have given them a sample template and asked them to fill it in, just because it would be easy for me to look at and easy for me to read. But I anticipate that challenge at the admissions committee's end. But I also feel that students have to do a little more now to write the resume. And resume writing is an art in itself. It's very different from essay writing and just filling the application form. You have to cross the T's and dot the I's and quantify and really put in a lot of effort to ensure that you have a good one-pager in place. But we are here to help in case you need assistance with any or all aspects of the admissions process. Please feel free to reach out, and we'll be happy to work with you to ensure that you can put across the best version of yourself. Yeah, any parting words, Kizon, before we close?
I just want to wish everyone who's applying for the Young Indian Fellowship Program a good luck. And I think the questions in this year's application forms are pretty interesting. So I'm not part of the admission committee, otherwise I would be happy to read them with you.
Yeah. So, but as a follow-up, what we can do for this is that, we'll do a walkthrough of the application form step by step, unlocking each piece, each subsection, so that you get a clear sense of what the flow and the format of the application form is. And we'll put that up for you to look at. And it may, this video combined with the walkthrough of the application form might make it easier for you to break down the admissions process and apply. I do wish, both of us, we wish you the best, and I hope you get into your dream university.